Welcome to 5.5. In this section, we're going to look specifically at how fractions and decimals are related. The short end of it is that to get a decimal from a fraction, you just divide. And then to go from a decimal back to a fraction, you just read its place value. And we've actually done both of those things already, but now we're going to look at it all together, and hopefully that'll help us to make all the connections. So let's have a look at this. So write 7/12 as a decimal rounded to the thousandths place. They'll often tell you to round it because it won't always go in evenly. So what we do, if we want to take this fraction and convert it to a decimal, is we simply set it up for division. Remember that a fraction is division waiting to happen. So let's go ahead and divide. Now, 12 won't go into 7. That's the problem. But I can add a decimal, I can add a 0, and I can say, well, 12 will go into 70. So it will kind of go into 7 in a sense, in a decimal sense. So 12 will go into 70. Let's see. 5 12s would be 60. So that's 10 left over. And I could add another 0, and I could bring it down. And I could say 12 goes into 100. Probably 7 times, because 7/12 is going to be 84. And I'd have 16 left over, and I could add a 0. 12 will go into 160. Did it not go? I didn't go in enough times. Let's see. So it doesn't go in 7 times. It would go in 8 times then, because 8 times 12 is 96. Okay, that gets a little bit closer. Makes more sense. Okay, now let me add a 0, bring it down. 12 will go into 40 3 times. 3 12s is 36. Subtract and get a 4, bring down the 0. 12 will go into 43 times, because 3 12s is 36. And I'm going to be stuck in a loop here. So it's going to be a repeating decimal here. So it's really 5.3 repeating. 5.83 repeating, excuse me. And they want us to round to the nearest thousandths place. So actually I'm going to go to the 10,000ths place. So I did have to go all the way out to the 10,000ths place. Look at this number. It's a small one, so it'll round it off. So this is the rounded answer, even though it's not the exact answer, it's the rounded according to the thousandths place that they asked us to round to. So if they tell you to round to a certain place, be mindful of that. Okay, so if you want to get from a fraction to a decimal, you just divide. And then you may have to round at some point if it doesn't go in evenly. What if you want to go from a decimal back to a fraction? You can simply read it as its place value. So in this case, it's 38 hundredths. And you can write it as 38 over 100, 38 hundredths. It's fractional form. Now, the only trouble with this, of course, is that you have to reduce fractions to their simplest form. So we want to go ahead and, let's see. Let's divide top and bottom by 2, because they're both even. So 38 divided by 2 is 19. 100 divided by 2 is 50. 19 is a prime number and won't go into 50, so that's done. So 38 hundredths in its simplest form as a fraction is 19 50ths. Now, how could we check to see if this is right? We could simply divide 50 into 19. And of course it won't go, but that's the beauty of decimals. I can add a decimal, I can add a 0, and I can say, well, 50 will go into 190 3 times, because 3 50s is 150. With 40 left over, add a decimal, add a 0, bring it down. 50 goes into 400. 5 goes into 48 times. 8 times 50 is 400. So it goes in evenly. And we expected it to. So if you want to go from decimal to fraction, read it as its place value, turn it into that place value, and reduce as needed. And if you want to go from fraction to decimal, just go ahead and divide and add a decimal and zeros as needed. So now we can simplify an expression. 1/2 plus 75 hundredths times 2/5. So we've got a couple of different options, right? I could convert everything into decimals. That might be the easiest thing to do. So 1/2 as a decimal is 0.5. And then 2/5 as a decimal. That one's a little bit less intuitive. And so 5 won't go into 2, right? But it will go into 20 4 times. So that means that this is 0.4. So now it's all in decimal format. And I could go ahead and do the math. So I have to wait on this addition. And I got to do my multiplication first. Let's see, what is that? So that's going to be 1, 2, 3 decimal places. So that's going to be 0.300. And I don't really need these extra zeros here. Right? I can write whether it's 0.300 or 0.30 or 0.3. Those are all the same. And now I can add these. 5/10 and 3/10 is 8/10. So working with decimals is pretty straightforward. Now I could also do this by working with fractions. So I could say 1/2 plus, instead of 0.75, I know 75 cents is 3/4. So I know that this is actually 3/4. And I know that when I'm multiplying fractions, I can multiply straight across. So I know that this is actually 1/2 plus 3 times 2 is, well, let's see. Do I have an opportunity to reduce? I sure do. So 2 goes into 2 once and into 4 twice. Now I'm dealing with some smaller numbers. 3 times 1 is 3. 2 times 5 is 10. That's a little bit smaller. Now, the trouble here is that I don't have a common denominator. So I need to build... Looks like I need to build this one up to make it look like a 10, so I can multiply top and bottom by 5. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 2 is 10. And of course 5/10 is a half. That makes sense. And now 5/10 plus 3/10 is 8/10. And 8/10 is actually what I got up here as a decimal, but because it's a fraction I need to reduce. They're both even numbers, so I'll just start by reducing by 2. 2 goes into 8 4 times, and 2 goes into 10 5 times. So 4/5 is the same, is the fractional equivalent of 8/10. And I can solve it both ways, and if I want to check to see if 4/5 is 8/10, I can divide it. I can divide it on my calculator, or I can divide it by hand. All right, let's do an example problem here. If a shirt that normally sells for $27.99 is on sale for 1/3 off, what is the sale price of the shirt? So what's 1/3 of this price here? So 1/3 of 27.99. So really I'm saying 3 divided into 27.99, and that'll give me a third of it, and that'll tell me the discount here. So 3 will go into 27 9 times, because 9 times 27 is, 9 times 3 is 27. So that goes in evenly, but now I need to look at my decimal parts. So the 9 comes down, 3 goes into 9 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. Bring down the other 9. 3 goes into 9 3 times, because 3 times 3 is 9. Okay, so it went in nice and evenly here. So that is my discount here. That's my 1/3 off. So to find out what my actual price is, I've got to take this and I've got to subtract my discount. So $18.66 is what I can expect to pay for this shirt when it's on sale. Okay, let's review some of the concepts here. To convert fractions to decimals, do we multiply or divide the numerator by the denominator? So to convert fractions to decimals, we divide. So remember, the fraction bar is division waiting to happen. So divide. B, the decimal, 13 hundredths, is equivalent to what fraction? Well, I kind of gave it away. It's equivalent to 13 hundredths. Do you need to reduce that? 13 is a prime number, so it's not gonna reduce with a power of 10. C, write 36 thousandths in decimal form and in fraction form. Well, 36 thousandths in decimal form and 36 thousandths in fraction form. Now, of course, I'd be wise to reduce this. I'll start by reducing by 2. And those are both still even. So I'll go by 2 again. And 3 won't go in, so there we go. So there's the lowest terms. There's the fraction. There's the decimal. D, explain how to write the fraction 84 1,000ths in lowest terms. Well, other than writing it as a decimal, which is then already kind of simplified, if we want to keep it as a fraction, I could simply reduce. So I want to reduce it by, let's say, 2 to start. And of course, those are both still even, so I'll divide by 2 again. And now I've reduced it as much as it can. And so how do I reduce a fraction to lowest terms? I divide numerator and denominator by the same thing in order to make the numbers smaller, but proportional and equivalent. So hopefully that all makes sense. Hopefully it kind of brings fractions, decimals all together, and we'll see you in the next section.